Perfect. And we are good to go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Friday and another episode of Life Talks. Today, I'm joined by a wonderful individual. Her name is Jessica, and I'm not going to dive too deep into her introductions because I don't want to be rude in any way. So I will let her speak on her behalf in just a moment. But this episode of Life Talks is an introduction to non-monogamy, what that means, what that looks like. We're going to dive in a little bit into our experiences. We're only going to share what we're comfortable with, but because the purpose of this is not necessarily for it to be about us, but to be about you, the viewer, to give you a little bit more insight, to give you a bit more education. And so hopefully at the end of this, you will, even if it's not something for you, you do walk away with a little bit more understanding. So with that being said, Jessica, please do me the honors of happily introducing yourself.
So my name is Jessica, obviously. Currently, I practice a form of non-monogamy called solo polyamory. So I'm kind of like, I live on my own, like a single person, but I still have multiple intimate relationships. So I get a little extra freedom. Outside of polyam, I do some digital art and I work in a corporate retail setting. So nothing too exciting, I guess, outside the polyamory.
I like that. I like that. So you get to kind of create your own space in your own world. And then through your other partners, you get to have those experiences with them when you want them.
Yeah. I get my own space, my own freedom. I really like having my own space, but then I don't have to worry about like the relationship escalator. So I don't have to worry about like these benchmarks that other people in monogamy are always worried about hitting all the time, which for me is much less stressful, but I understand that definitely for some people.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I've been practicing for going on 3 years now, and it has been quite the ride so far, just from like my own mistakes that still come up that I learn from, and it's worth it for me. I think back to before I started practicing non-monogamy, like I hated the idea of polyamory with a passion. Like I was so opposed to it just because I had bad experiences with partners who wanted to be polyamorous. And so from that, I was like completely biased and I hated it altogether. But then like while I was dealing with that opposition, I myself was struggling with like, okay, so if I'm with someone, why am I still feeling these urges, very strong urges for other people? I don't want to cheat on my partners or anything like that. So why are these there? Because I'm very happy with this person. So non-monogamy definitely allowed me to be able to explore that, to be able to have a sense of understanding. And yeah, it's been an adventure.
It's definitely a venture, especially when we don't start off with a lot of resources. Like everything we're taught is right out of monogamy, and we don't have a playbook. We're all writing it on our own, so we're definitely making a lot of mistakes. So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's start with defining non-monogamy. You actually shared a post. I'm not sure if it was this morning or yesterday. I caught it today. You shared in a post using a umbrella diagram and having yeah. Do you want to kind of describe that a little bit?
yeah, so think of monogamy and non-monogamy as they're two separate umbrellas. So your monogamy umbrella, those would be your closed relating relationships. They typically tend to be a dyad between two people. But your non-monogamous relationships, they can be formed of multiple dyads. Oftentimes they are, but they're open relating relationships. And that could be for different kinds of things. It could be, most people think it's sex, but it's also romance and intimacy and all these other things that you can share with people in life that we generally think of as belonging to a monogamous relationship, but you can expand that and have that with multiple people.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And when I seen that post, I'm just like, yes, like for a visual aid, this is perfect. How you just like have the main concept and then what all falls into that. And so I'm just like, I'm gonna ask her to tell about that. So thank you for that. But no, I completely agree with that. Non-monogamy, obviously not being monogamous, It's a setting that goes beyond your typical two-person relationship. Um, and now that's not to say that there's not monogamous relationships with exceptions. There are, of course. And ideally, whether you are monogamous, whether you're non-monogamous, maybe you're not dating at all. That either way, it's completely okay. It's completely valid. We are not here to advocate that one is better for the other. And I know I wouldn't, and I can almost guarantee Jessica wouldn't, because everyone is different. And it is all about finding what works for you, what makes you happy, what fills your cup of tea at the end of the day. And as long as it's healthy, that's all that matters. It's all that matters. um, so tell me how you got introduced into the concept of non-monogamy.
Well, even as a kid, I kind of had those ideas floating around, but I'd only been truly introduced to monogamy. So I didn't understand growing up why I couldn't have 7 boyfriends. Like I remember going home to my mom and being like, I'm gonna have 7 boyfriends and I can do karate, so no one's gonna tell me no. Like obviously not a healthy thing at the time, right? But so I always had that floating around in the back of my head. And then as I got older, there was a boy that I was interested in, and he was in an open relationship, which I didn't end up pursuing that relationship. That was my, uh-oh. You all right?
1 second. Okay. I'm so sorry. Please continue.
Oh no, you're good. Well, that was like my first introduction to like, oh, this is truly a thing that people can do and it can be okay.
Yeah.
So then in high school, I ended up in accidentally in an open relationship with 3 other people. We didn't know what we were doing at the time, but we were doing it and it worked for us. So and then I ended up in this monogamous relationship. I think I was about 18 or 19 when I got into that relationship. And it started out really healthy. And we ended up opening it over time because we were both interested and seeing other people. And my partner at the time, his brother was polyamorous, so we had some experience watching them. And unfortunately, our relationship really did end up on an unhealthy note, but I definitely learned a lot from that. Hopefully he has too. So, but since then, I've been able to really grow into it from all those mistakes that I made in that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for being so vulnerable about that. Sorry to hear that it did not end on the best of terms, but like you said, it's a learning experience, and it definitely sounds like you took a lot of what happened in the relationship with you. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think when you open up a relationship like that, you learn a lot about not just your personal attachment style, but all the unhealthy things and things you don't communicate that you push under the rug that works in monogamous society. Not saying that monogamous society is bad. There's things in polyculture that we push under the rug too, but just all these things that come up that you have to learn to deal with that you've never learned to deal with before.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioning that, I'll go ahead and talk about obviously monogamy is the winner right now in society. Like non-monogamy exists, but as far as like what is acceptable within society, it is more often monogamy. We do see some victories here and there of couples getting to however many their names get to be put on the birth certificate of someone else, and other situations. So we do get to see those experiences. But in reality right now, monogamy is the one that is accepted by society, and that is hard. So like I know from my upbringing, I did not grow up being educated on all of this. I had a terrible upbringing anyways, so I didn't really expect to be educated about other forms of dating. But my environment growing up was, okay, you have a soulmate, and then you have someone that you belong to, and there's someone out there for you, and when you find them, that you'll just know. And like as a child who is like a sponge and absorbing all of these things, I'm just like, that's absolutely not okay, to be teaching a child, now that I am thinking back to that and everything, because You know, as a child, I desired friendships. I desired multiple friendships. Okay, well, then I started crushing on multiple people as a child. And I felt so guilty for that because I'm having all these crushes and like, oh no, now I'm being unfaithful or dishonest to one person and things like that. So it really kind of sets you up for that confusion a little bit. And that's part of the reason why I love seeing more openness and more diversity when it comes to relationships that are non-monogamous, because you know it allows that opportunity for education.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I can relate a lot to your experience here. There's a lot that we're taught the script in monogamy. And there's definitely people where I've seen that have been taught a slightly different or more healthy script, which
Yeah,
is really nice to see. But I feel like the majority of us get that script that this is the way it has to be. And really it doesn't. There's so much more out there.
right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, and the thing of it is like when you grow up in that environment of it has to be this way, and then you decide to do something else, oh my gosh, does that open such a can of worms? Like, oh my gosh, like as a monogamous individual who I could go to my relatives and say, oh yeah, this is such and such, and let me tell you about our relationship. Okay, I can't go to someone in my family like that if I wanted to and tell them, okay, this person that, you know, I only really have physical experiences with, they have this going on or they are this way and I really enjoy this about them, because to them it's like, wait, you're seeing this person, okay, you're seeing someone else, okay, it's all about the sex for you. And it's like, no, that's not the case at all. Not at all.
No, not at all. I know some people where that definitely is like their thing, but the majority of people in non-monogamy just doesn't. Sex only is just not the thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, so kind of getting into like what introduced me to non-monogamy, the first legitimate, and I use the word legitimate lightly, experience that I had was I was in elementary school still, well, middle school kind of. I was dating this girl who was seeing another girl, and I had to be okay with that if I wanted to date her. And like, obviously, we were kids. That was a terrible thing to have been brought upon me because I didn't understand what the heck was going on. You know, being a hormonal teenager at the time, I'm just like, why? This is like hurting me. Why don't you feel this way about me? And all that terrible, you know, terrible negative thought syndrome. And and so through that, you know, it kind of made me cautious about polyamory, just the idea of it, not really being educated on it. And then it was about four years ago, I would say, I was seeing this individual who, after we had started dating monogamously, came to me with the idea of wanting to be polyamorous. And, you know, how would I feel about that and things like that. And I was my monogamous self. So I'm like, well, I'm not okay with that. You know, if you want to be monogamous, that's on you, but I won't date you. And that's going to really suck because I really, really like you. And that was a very dangerous thing to say. I should never have said that, because, you know, that was guilting them and everything. Um, but we ended up parting ways after like 4 or 5 months and things like that, you know, two different lives that were going on and two different sets of goals, which was completely okay. And then I went through this period of like, I'm so mad at this. I want to understand it. I want to understand it so I can understand why the person who caused me this pain did what they did. And that was also at the time that I was having my confusion of, okay, if I'm with someone monogamously, why am I still having feelings for all these people? And so in doing that research, I realized, oh my gosh, this is a lot of what I have going on with myself right now. This is absolutely okay. How do I go about this? And so that was, you know, that was my introduction from there. And it's been a educational process. It's been a trial and error process. Like I said, there's still mistakes that I'm making to this day because my life changes so much in terms of everything that I'm doing with my life. Like no day is the same, and I always have something to do. So things are constantly changing. So with that, it's trying to find like my balance between how do I get to practice non-monogamy while I'm tending to all of these other areas in life.
It's definitely, it can definitely turn into a juggling act, especially when things are changing around, but I mean, that's part of the adventure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is. And that's the thing is like, so I'm with two individuals right now that I'm in exclusive relationships with. I'm in my long-term relationship with my partner, Ori. We've been together for over a year and they practice monogamy. They haven't always practiced monogamy. Before I came along, they were actually part of a triad. But through just them and I, they're, I guess, okay with just being in a relationship with me and they're not having desires for others right now. So they are only dating me, which is I completely support. And then I've recently started dating another individual who I've known for about, we've been talking on and off for about 5 or 6 months and everything. We have two very different lives. And they are seeing another individual. And so it's trying to find that balance amongst everything right now. And it's definitely interesting. I know for Ori and I, we have a lot going on. We are in the process of getting placement for my younger brother and sister, having them move in, and we'll be, their parents and take care of them. But then like I have my full-time job and then I have Isabella Tate Speaks and I just started the segment. So I'm having conversations with fantastic individuals. And then, we both drive for DoorDash part-time. Ori is in school full-time. And so it kind of raises the question of, is it even worth the effort and time to put in for non-monogamy? And for me, that answer is yes. I have found that what recharges my battery and what keeps my attractions high and my curiosity is high and my interest high is that I do get to have experiences with people, different people. And it's not that one experience gives me more than what the other one does. It's just that each experience gives me a little bit of something that fills up that cup, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's like, I try to tell people it's like your friends, like each of your friends offers you something different, but you don't love one friend any less than the other necessarily. So
Yeah, exactly. How do you handle the I love yous in relationships?
I'm a guarded person, so I wait as long as I can.
Yeah,
um like because I want to really make sure it means something, and generally the people I end up picking some tend to be similar but more open than that. A little bit more open to those kind of things than I am.
yeah,
And it's not that I don't want the love. I'm absolutely here for it. Like that's one of my intents when getting into a relationship. um it's just a matter of making sure that's really what I want to say before I say it, making sure the intent is there behind my words.
sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. For me, that is like so tricky. um, Excuse me, burp. See, wine, it does this to me. Plus, I just ate, so I've got a whole thing going on right now. um, for me, I am a very logical person. And so what that means is that I think about the value of what I love you means to me. And if I tell someone that I love you, for different people, that can mean different things. So like I can love you as the person that you are and love your experiences, but I may not love you in the way of, okay, I love you in terms of wanting something long term with you. I'm just loving you for this moment. I care about you immensely and things like that. And it's situational, right? Like each experience is different and everything. So I typically find myself in those moments of wanting to express that sort of emotion after NRE slows down, new relationship energy. I do my best to give it about 2 to 3 months, see how I'm feeling, if this person is even still within my life. And if that emotion or if that reasoning and evidence is still there, then okay, want to communicate this to them. Let's talk about it. What does this mean? And things like that. And it doesn't happen with everyone. Like, I have had a lot of experiences within my life. And I think only about less than 10% of individuals that I've had experiences with have I ever said that to. And like I said, I've had a lot of experiences, so that's a very small number. But going off of what you were saying earlier, experiences, relationships, even if it's not a relationship, it's just like sort of a oh, how would I describe it? Just an occasional occurrence, nothing explicit. Those can be anything at all. I've been in situations where, okay, yeah, it's been romantic. I've been in situations where, okay, this is more of just a comfort level of intimacy. I've had sexual experiences. I've had partners who, I have goals with, small, long term, whatever the case is. And so non-monogamy definitely gives you that freedom to be able to explore that and figure out, like, okay, is this something for me, or is this not even for me at all?
Right. And I like that you get to explore the different kinds of love that are out there too, kind of like you're saying, like your friendship love, your platonic love, and
Mm.
your sexual love, and your eros, your romantic love.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I feel like we don't talk about that enough in our society too. Like I feel like we should even say I love you to our friends more. Like I live with my best friend. I
Right.
tell them I love them all the time, but it's totally in a platonic way. It's not like in
Yeah.
a romantic or sexual way like we do for other relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I can completely get that. An individual who I actually was in a relationship with for a few years, and then it just kind of de-escalated into a friendship, and now we don't really talk at all. But like, I still very much care for them. Like, I still love them. I'm not in love with them, and I don't want to date them again. But I still love them, and I value their life. I value the experience with them and everything like that. So it definitely comes in different shapes and sizes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And, going off of what you were saying with society, I think society gets caught up in white picket fence, marriage by 30, kids by 31, and 50, your kids are having grandchildren. Like that, I feel like society gets caught up in that.
Yeah, there's definitely a relationship escalator there. And I know both monogamous and non-monogamous people that have like that relationship escalator structure. I can even think of a whole quad that has like that little escalator structure. But it's also nice to have the option just not to have it in some relationships.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so for me, I know one of the hardest things about practicing non-monogamy is having to work through the identification and the analytics of how you're feeling and where you want to go with this person. What experience do you want for the outcome? And that can be hard because sometimes you will run into a situation where someone wants more than what you do, and then you kind of have to break the news, and then depending upon how educated they are into their self-value, their self-value may feel completely worthless because, oh, you don't want the same thing that they do. And it's like, no, that's not the case at all. Like, I think you're a great person and everything, but what you're wanting and what I'm wanting are overlapping each other, and it's not going to work.
Right. Right. It's like it's an opportunity. If I end up in those situations, I try to remind people like it's an opportunity. It's an open door to get what you actually need versus shutting a door in your face to get everything you don't need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. It comes with a whole lot of experiences, and I could talk all night in that specific direction, but we don't have all night. Okay, so what are and I know you've kind of covered this, but what are some benefits that you've gotten from getting to practice non-monogamy?
So learning about primary and secondary emotions, so things like learning how to manage my jealousy and anger, because those aren't core emotions, they're always tied to something else. So being able to learn to get down and get into the root cause of all of that
Yeah.
has been really healthy for me. I've learned so many communication skills out of this. I've learned a lot about my attachment style and how my attachment style can be different with different kinds of people and how that's going to affect my communication with those people. Um, and it gives me more support. So if one partner, like my partners are both busy people, so if one partner is not available because they're working on schoolwork or something, and my roommate's not available to emotionally support me, I have someone else that I can lean on. And then like both of my partners offer different things. Like one is super into anime and karate and Japanese stuff, and the other one is into all the same kind of music that I am, and like some of the same nerdy TV shows that I like. So
Yeah.
I get a different experience with each of them, but I also I've just gained so much personal growth from it that I personally never would have gained from my monogamy experience,
Yeah.
excuse me. And then in my case with monogamy, the way I was raised, monogamy for me is a very codependent experience. So non-monogamy has been a very freeing experience for me, where I've been able to learn to stand on my 2 feet and rely on myself and find where my own power is.
Yeah. I like that. And I can definitely relate with you on all of that, basically. Especially about, you have different partners for different things. And so one of the things that I had to, and it takes time. So with Ori, like I've spent hours talking about different things, probably hours that would probably sum up to days, which is completely okay because they are so worth it. And our relationship has definitely been worth it. But Ori will bring up, okay, well, I feel like I'm not good enough, or I feel like I can't be your everything, because are they have those priorities. Yeah, I would say a little bit, kind of those priorities of wanting the one, wanting to be enough for someone and everything. And that also sort of ties into like the experiences they've had in life of not being good enough in certain situations. So we sat down and we talked about, okay, well, no, you are good enough in everything that you need to be. And so I went along with the example of, okay, if you and I broke up, you would go out and have experiences with people, right? And they're like, well, yeah, over time. And I'm like, okay, so those experiences you have with other people, they would give you different things than what I'm ever able to give you, right? And Ori was like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay, so that's all that this is. It's not devaluing you in any way. I very much am deeply in love with you. I very much want a long-term life with you. However long we can be compatible together is fantastic. But there's definitely nothing wrong with you at all. You just keep being you, and that's always going to be okay. I look at, let's see, it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, actually, I had an experience with this couple, and they were great. They were awesome. I really enjoyed that. And I think of like, okay, what did I get from that experience with them versus my other experiences that I'm currently pursuing? And with that, like it was being in a social situation that is different than what I would have gotten within this situation, and getting to kind of like explore and play in that area and everything. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that was like super great. And that actually told me a little bit about what I want versus what I don't want and everything like that. So there are those benefits, but it's knowledge and benefits that you're not going to know until you get to explore and until you get to experiment.
As I say, I feel like by only experiencing one side of the spectrum, you don't really get to find out what you want. I feel like everybody should have the opportunity to explore through everything and figure out what's best for them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And quit demonizing individuals who bring more than one person around sometimes. Like, and that's why I hate, and I use that harshly, but I hate when people, talk about people being sluts or, all these other derogatory terms and everything just because they are having their best life. And it's like, okay, sure, if you want to judge them, more power to you, whatever else, good luck with your life. But in 10 years from now, if we were to sit down and do a test to see who has more self-awareness and self-knowledge, that individual who you were calling a slut and everything else is going to know more about themselves, is going to have more of a skill set and everything like that, because they are exploring who they are. Whereas you are sitting here not happy with your life for whatever reason, and you are taking it out on someone because they are doing something that you aren't going to get to do.
Yeah, usually I find people who are happy in their lives don't feel the need to use words like that.
Right.
Because they're trying to take power away from somebody in some way, shape, or form when doing that, I feel like. So
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's rough. And like I said, there's so much to this. And like typically I'm really good at keeping these shows organized, but like when we're talking about non-monogamy here and we're getting caught up in experiences, we branch off into so many different directions, and I just love it.
I say it's a big world. So there's
Yeah.
plenty of room to branch off.
Right, absolutely. So, and we did kind of touch base on this. So, for you personally, and I know you kind of already answered this, is it all about the sex for you?
No, absolutely not. Actually, I'm demisexual, so I really have to trust you in order to have sex with you.
Yeah,
So for me, it's more about the intimate connection. Um, Usually I hope those go into romantic connections. Not always, not every intimate relationship becomes a romantic one, but I'm romantic at heart. So
yeah, sure.
and it's mostly about the experiences. Like I really enjoy spending that one-on-one time with somebody. I'm very, very, very much an introvert, so large group settings don't work very well for me. So to have someone that I can sit down and have that intimate interaction with regularly is really nice.
Yeah, I like that. Let's see. For me, I would say there were moments, yeah, in the beginning. And I'm going to be honest about that because in the beginning, I did not know what the hell I was doing, like at all. And I started practicing this at a point in my life where I was struggling with hypersexuality. And so that was immediately one of the things that drew me in of, okay, I'm having these arousals and desires and everything. Okay, non-monogamy is going to let me have the romance that I want while still getting to explore that. And if someone comes my way and doesn't like that, well, then I just won't be with him. But that's not exactly how it is. But like I said, I was just so uneducated, and that was a very dangerous mindset to be in. Um, and unfortunately, it caused moments in that learning process for me where my actions that hurt other people, some of those individuals I can't apologize to. I'm no longer in contact with them. And that, like, now that I was able to work through that hypersexuality and get help with that and everything, like, wanting to make amends and offer restitution, unfortunately, I'm not able to. And so, like, I'll just carry that with me until I'm able to, if I'll ever. um but it can definitely, the sex can distract you, admittedly, but also it really just depends on what your situation is. Like you were saying, you're demisexual, and so no, it's not all about the sex for you at all. You have a set of requirements for that first. And so like you and I have been talking about, for each person it's different, but I would just recommend, no matter what your situation is, do your best to get educated, do your best to talk to people.
Yes, yes, because I can relate to some of that too on both sides. Because that first relationship that went from monogamy and we opened up into polyamory, we did an unethical form of polyamory starting out, which we didn't understand was unethical because we didn't have the language for it at the time.
Yeah.
What we thought we were aiming for was a triad, which is, as you know, a relationship with three people who are all involved with each other.
Mhm.
Um, I very much wanted the romance aspect of it. I think he wanted some of the romance aspect of it too, but there was definitely a bit of a playboy attitude that went along with that too. Like you said, the sex can be distracting depending on where
Yeah.
your mindset's at. So that
Yeah.
ended up going down a pretty toxic route. I ended up learning a lot about my codependency through that, and I did hurt some people doing that, unfortunately. But I've learned a lot since about. I don't think I'll do a triad again because they're very, very difficult, but I learned a lot about what makes a healthy and an unhealthy triad through that, and
Yeah.
just from our different perspectives on going through it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, like anyone watching this, please do not take this as a one way fits all type of introduction. It is not at all. The one of the biggest things that I hope you take from this is that you're not going to know everything right off the bat. It is a trial and error process. I think if you are born into a situation where you're educated from the start about it, then you have a lower risk of going through all the experiences that we're mentioning. But if you grew up monogamously, if that's what you were taught, if that's what you were surrounded by, and then trying to find your place in a community that not even society is as open to yet, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle. You're going to have moments that are okay, and you're going to have moments that are fantastic. It is definitely the back and forth, and eventually, if you do enough research, if you have enough consistency and effort, the scale will tip, and you will more often have good experiences rather than more frequent bad ones because you're making mistakes.
I was reading a quote recently that said that our mistakes are stepping stones to success. So really, I mean, even if you're doing research, which you absolutely should, there's still a certain number of mistakes that you have to make before you get to this point where you're like, oh, I'm comfortable and I know what I'm doing and I know how to avoid that now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think to where I'm at now versus where I started, and who knows where I'll be at in another year from now. But I would advocate this in relationships as well, just as I do when I'm talking about business or whatever else, is that you're going to fail, but you're going to fail forward. Like it's not the end. We are all human. I burp on these shows. It's all okay. So as as serious as this is, don't take it so seriously all the time.
Right. I say you can't foresee everything. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is a lifetime process. It really, really is. What sort of boundaries do you have in your relationships? Whether you're uh, starting one or how you maintain them, what sort of boundaries work for you?
that's a great question, actually. So after I got out of my last major relationship, I actually sat down and made myself a spreadsheet of things that were, these are absolute musts in a relationship. These are things that, I'm iffy on, but they're negotiable. And then some things that were like red flags, absolute hard no's. So now I have a whole range for my boundaries now, to say, so that I'm not hitting the brick wall
Yeah,
immediately every time I had a boundary, which is a problem that I used to have. So now we have some boundaries, like if I'm going to bring up a major issue with any of my partners, I don't just bring it up over a text message, because that's a bad way to convey tone. If it's something really
very.
important, like I'm going to call you, you're going to be like, hey, when you got some free time, can you give me a call? I want to talk
Yeah,
about something. So that's something that's been a good boundary for me. For some people, I've learned that I need to have set days with them to have that structural security, where when you have monogamy and you live with somebody, you have that structural security. So finding your boundaries to have that is a little bit different for everyone. One partner I just see a couple times a week here and there, and that's enough structural boundary for that relationship. So even both of my relationships are different. And then we have other boundaries, like if we're going to start talking to new people, to avoid jealousy, we're like, hey, just want to let you know I'm getting on dating apps. And then if we actually start dating someone, we make sure that we communicate that across the board so that it's consensual and everybody's in the know, it's open and honest.
Yeah.
But then like there's like the really and this is a question I actually get a lot after, is monogamy all about sex? Like, where are the boundaries with that? And it's like, well, each person's relationship is their relationship, and let someone's getting hurt and you're being safe, like, I don't need to know about your sex life. But
Right.
everybody's in on that too, because I know some people who it's very much about the sex, so they share that sex life with other people. So there's all kinds of boundaries. Everybody's going to be different. But I think the best thing I ever did was sit down and figure out where my must-haves were, some of my wiggle room points, and where my hard boundaries were, so I'm not crashing into a wall every time. And then understanding too that as I learn and grow, that some of those boundaries might change for me and they might need to be renegotiated with partners, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a set of, I don't want to say set of standards, but a set of principles that I do my best to follow. And I say do my best to follow because I don't always get to follow them, unfortunately. It really just depends on the pace of the experience with the person and like who the person is. So like I'm glad you brought up about not texting serious things, because that is something for me where my intention is there of, okay, I'm going to have all of this typed out to send to you. That way you can take your time to read it. There's no rush or anything like that. And you can look back on it if you need to. And it's there for you, and just get back to me whenever you can, especially if there's a lot of emotions, in the beginning. But it never works out that way at all. I actually, that was part of the mistake that I made today. I wanted to talk about a situation with one of my partners that involves something that they had going on and some of the worries that I had with it. Not that I'm saying you have to do what I'm saying at all. You are free to make your own choice, but as your partner, I do need to be honest with you about my concerns with this situation. And
Right.
so it was literally, okay, I have a show to do today after I get off work. I have things to do at work. After I get done with the show, I have one of my relationships I have things going on with, because my partner is about to leave for vacation for around a week. And so like I have all these things going on today. So what I ended up doing was I ended up typing out what it is that I wanted to send to them. And then whenever it became convenient and consented to, then I'll be like, okay, here's this for you. Please take your time to read it. Definitely no pressure or anything like that. But like the lovely individual that you are, the tone you brought up about the tone, and that's what makes that dangerous. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I wanted to be honest about the recent experience that I just had, because that is hard. It is, I have found, and like you validated, always trying to at least have a voice conversation. I try to see the individual. If I can't see the individual, then we will have a phone call. But definitely when you have a very busy schedule, like what I was just talking about, that's really hard to be able to get accomplished. So even if your intentions are good there, that doesn't mean the outcome is going to be good just because your intentions are. And I even attempted, like at the beginning, explaining like, okay, here's what I don't want this to come off as. Here's what this is not for me, just so you're aware of that as you're reading my concerns. But still, it still happened that way. So we're working with that right now, which is okay. We have wine, we have a conversation, it's all okay.
A tool that one of my partners introduced me to that I found extremely helpful, because his one of his relationships, one of his other partners is very much long distance majority of the time. There's an app called Marco Polo where you can kind of send these video messages back and forth like text messages, but then they're all still there so that you can see them and reference them. So
Yeah.
sometimes if it's really busy, you just hey, let me know when you have, if I want to tell you about something, let me know it's okay to tell you about something. And then we can send those back and forth as we have the time to talk about it. And then it's not turning into a text, in my case, a text trash can fire, because I read way too far into things.
Yeah.
Or if it has to be a text message, one of my friends was sharing that they put in emojis when we were talking about it today to like try and like convey the message they're actually trying to get off. So there's definitely ways to work around the tone, but it's a challenge.
It is, and that's the thing, like, and I tell people this who, if the conversation gets to a point where, we're discussing about possibly being in a relationship together in some form, where like it's that routine, it's that consented, exclusive nature between the two of us, I will bring up one of the most difficult parts about dating me and being in my life frequently is that I am more logical than what I am emotional. So whereas I can come off as robotic, I can come off as cold, I never mean it that way. I have the highest amount of love for you and care for you, but physically or verbally, it may not come off that way. And I'm so very sorry, but that's just how my brain is processing, is how it's analyzing. And it's like, okay, this makes sense in a logical perspective. But the part that I forget to interpret is that people don't read it as logical. They read it as, oh, so you think this is wrong, or I'm doing this wrong. And it's like, no, 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 I'm not saying that at all. I promise. So it's, putting out that disclaimer in the beginning, and going into boundaries. For me, it really depends on the person. So like right now, with Ori, we have a boundary that obviously things are open and discussed. If I'm going to go have a physical experience with someone, that's all I need to say to them. If they're completely okay with it, they just need to know of, okay, if I'm going to go hang out with someone, is it someone of possible interest? What sort of interest is that? So and typically I just tell them, hey, I'm going to go hang out with someone. It may or may not be physical, I don't know. And they're completely okay with that. And I put out I put on the table, if you want to know more, you're always welcome to ask. I will, I'm not going to hide anything so long as I have consent to share the experience from whoever else is involved. But you're always welcome to ask. That's never going to be a problem. You can sort of relate that to like the cell phone thing. I never have anything to hide. Yes, I have a passcode on my phone because, well, of everything I have in my phone. I make purchases with it and everything like that. I'm about to have children in the house. I need to have that locked at all times. But I always put out the disclaimer, if you want to be in my phone, you never have to ask, just like go for it. Just be careful of what it is you're looking at, because you may see something you're not quite ready to see in terms of whatever conversation I'm having with someone else. And the same thing for if you're looking over my shoulder, that is all on you. So with Ori talking about the boundaries a little bit, we have that boundary. They have a preference of, okay, if you're going to have someone over, our bedroom is completely off limits, not a problem at all. And I rarely have people over just because I'm so busy all the time. The boundary of with my physical experiences, because I do still have those on occasion, are, okay, make sure you're just being tested regularly. Make sure you're looking for the signs that this may be a dangerous situation, things like that. And from when I first started having a plethora of physical experiences versus now, like we're talking like back to the time when I was very uneducated about everything. I got myself into some very dangerous situations that I should never have been in at all. But that just comes from that desire and that uneducation, having the desire and thinking, okay, this will be okay, because what can go wrong? And then putting yourself in those situations, and it's like, oh, what the hell did I just do? There's a reason all of these resources are out there. People, please get educated and try to help spread awareness so other people don't find themselves in that situation. you know, but like I said, it's situational for me when it comes to boundaries because each one is different. I try to offer the same vulnerability with partners in terms of like my openness and things like that. Um, but it just depends because that can always change, which is absolutely okay. Right now, with Juliet, we are still in the early stages of figuring out what boundaries we do and don't want. Because the two of us have very, very different lives. I mean, we're talking like fire and ice type of opposite lives, right? And so it's having that desire of wanting to be intimate. Okay, but we're we're discovering that being too intimate is actually not a good thing. So there at the beginning when we were talking about what sort of exclusive features do we want from each other, and we were talking like, okay, yes, seeing each other every now and again, going on dates, getting to hang out even if it's not a date and things like that on occasion. Okay, and then there was the desire of being more involved into my personal life of like family and friends and things like that, which is absolutely okay. But then like that opens up a doorway of certain standards and expectations with that, just because I have to safeguard myself and I have to safeguard those who I'm involving you with. And so we found that the opposition between the two of us when it comes to that, well, it's not very compatible. So we're discussing that, we're working through that, and that's completely okay. And that's what I'm kind of glad that I brought that up, because I want to have that level of transparency with whoever watches this. But these are real experiences and it's not the end of the world. Like I sending the text message that I did today, or having the conversations that I have to have with people, sometimes those can be really emotional, really emotional. There's a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of happiness, all these different emotions that can come up. But no matter the emotion, it doesn't have to be at the end of the world. Definitely take your time with it. Don't do not rush into it. Don't be so full of haste to try to be like, okay, well, let's get to an ending point because I don't like the way this feels. No, you've got to figure out, why are you feeling this way? If you're feeling, talking about jealousy, jealousy is a very important concept. If you're feeling jealous, ask yourself, take the time, why am I feeling jealous? Is the person who is that I'm feeling jealousy from, are they doing something that's actually hurting me? Am I not comfortable with something that they're doing? Or is this relating to something I have going on with me and mine, or from a past experience and whatever else? And typically you don't have that answer right away because that emotion is so strong.
I found for me personally to analyze if I'm feeling compersion with the jealousy is really helpful, because usually if I'm not feeling compersion with the jealousy, that means I need to analyze what the other person is doing or what I'm doing that's hurting me. But if I'm feeling compersion with it, I've learned for me that, okay, there's something going on internally and there's a need that I have that's not getting met. So what can we find out about that and go get that met?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
It really is not. And I think, I know for me, like jealousy caused me to make a lot of decisions. Like I can't put moral agency on jealousy. Like I was the one who made those decisions, but I made the decisions that I made out of how I was feeling, which was jealousy at the time. And it's how do I handle that? How do I go about that? How do you go about that when you're uneducated? At that point in my life, I did not do it in a very healthy context at all. And that more goes into the hurting people and everything, unfortunately. But like we mentioned, it is a learning experience for you, and it's a process. It is definitely a process, but you just have to ask yourself, is it worth it?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I would say anybody who's getting into it should definitely start learning ways to handle their jealousy, because if you're not willing to start learning that, it's not going to be worth it. I can definitely think of some times where I hurt some of my girlfriends early on because I was making decisions out of my jealousy to protect what I had coming out of a monogamous structure that took away autonomy from that person and hurt them, and that wasn't okay. But I didn't have the education or the language or the understanding of any of that at the time. So I can't fault myself for it. But at the same time, if someone else can go learn to find that information before they make that mistake, that'd be awesome too.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me one quick second. This wine is drying out my throat and I'm about to have a coughing fit. So let me grab water really quick.
Okay.
I have no idea how long this has been in here, but we're going with it. Wonderful. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. So like you said earlier, we're all humans. So
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. I mean, we've gone over so much. And again, thank you so much for your time. Like this, I very much appreciate this. And, I have a love-hate relationship with asking people to, give up 60 to 90 minutes of their day because I value other people's time. But there's a lot of respect that goes into someone being willing to sit down and have a serious conversation about a serious topic that other people are going to watch, other people are going to keep in mind and things like that. So whenever someone's like, yeah, I'm okay with having a conversation with you about that, I'm like, yes, I'm so happy about this, and for so many different reasons.
yeah, as I say, you happen to catch me right in a time where this is like part of my personal journey right now, is sharing this kind of stuff, where other parts of my journey where there's a lot of educational material like on LGBTQ culture, like don't ask me about that. You can Google it super easy, but like the information's not as easy to find. It's not as easy to figure out what is and is not good information without experience. So having someone else to talk to you about it's really nice too.
Yeah, absolutely. And and that kind of makes me think of a cliche here, that I'm going to bring up because it's been joked about in my household of, can you have friends that you don't have experiences with? Yeah, absolutely you can. And I have connections with people who practice non-monogamy that I've never had an experience with or that I won't. And that is a cliche where, okay, it's kind of funny, but it's really, really old as well. Because, okay, yeah, if you look at my history and my experiences, sure, more often I have some sort of experience with someone, whether it be, a small bit of romance, whether it be something physical, whether it be something, more practical, whatever it is. Yeah, more often that does end up happening, but that's never a requirement at all. That's just the way the situation happens and the availabilities, I can talk, happens and things like that. So that cliche, like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with that.
I love there's this meme kind of going around right now where just because you have a connection with someone doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with them. Maybe you're supposed to open a taco shack. And like even further, like, oh well, maybe
I
only I'm
just
supposed
need
to like
that.
your Facebook posts. So every connection's different now, no matter how small. And I feel like sometimes we put immense pressure for all of our connections to have deep meaning to them, and they don't always have to. Sometimes they can just be that.
Right, yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing, we can kind of lead into next, is like there's so much pressure that goes into relationships, whether you're monogamous or you're non-monogamous, whatever your practice is, there's already a lot of pressures there. So if we think of what should be common sense, okay, if I have a problem, I should probably look for a solution. So if I'm having a lot of pressures with something, I should try to figure out how to get to a point where there's not so much pressure, whether it be, learning something, whether that be trying to find a sense of community, whether that be I just maybe stop, altogether, whatever the case is. But pressure doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like I said, I mean, I've had a plethora of experiences with people. Just to be transparent, I talked about this in the first ever Life Talks video when we were talking about troubled childhood. And I was talking about the hypersexuality that I experienced from the abuse that happened to me as a child. So because of that, like I have a very high body count, and I'm very honest about that body count with people who I involve myself with. I'm always present that I am safe and, get tested regularly and things like that. But I've slept with 100 people so far and everything. And so that, just have that sense of awareness. If that's something you're comfortable with, then great. And if not, like, that's absolutely okay too. The main takeaway from, all of this entire episode is that it's situational. Find
Right.
what works for you. But yeah, I mean, it's all over the place, all over the place. So where do you find that you struggle with more so with non-monogamy?
With non-monogamy, I have anxiety. So when I get into a low point, I can struggle with some of my personal social securities, and those can bleed into my relationships. So I've learned a lot of ways to self-manage those. So like sometimes I'll be in a really low spot and I'll notice somebody hasn't texted me back for a really long time, and having to remind myself things like, well, that's not necessarily about our relationship. They're probably just busy. Let me go over here and do something else to keep myself busy. So mostly my biggest thing is managing my own anxiety. So
Yeah,
in a way, it's also been really healthy for that, because I've had to learn a lot of new coping mechanisms for myself that I didn't learn growing up.
right. Yeah, I can relate with that 100%. For me, it more so tied into like the trauma I experienced as a child and not being taught how to handle emotions in a healthy, having healthy coping skills. And that tied into my relationships for the longest time until I started to do more research and have experiences and things like that, figuring out what actually does and does not work. For me, I would say the hardest part is maintaining effort with my busy schedule, and I'm probably working through my own emotions. I try to be as silent about those as possible because, like I said, I'm a very logical person. So sometimes if I'm saying something because I'm emotional, I will take time away, but I still need to convey what it is that was going on with me. And even though I'm not emotional at that moment, it can come off bitchy to people. And I get that, even though like I'm not mad at them or anything like that, it still just comes off that way. So I really struggle with that level of empathy, like adjusting what it is I have to convey to a certain level of empathy for other people. At times I'm careless about that because I'm like, okay, well, if you're in my life and you're with me, then you need to understand that this is just how I am, and that it's hard for me to convey things in a certain way that are going to be at your level of empathy. And so that is one thing that I'm struggling with. I've been struggling with that for over a year now. And it's almost, and it's so funny to me. So there's a hypocrisy here, is that there's been moments when it gets expressed that you're cold, you're robotic. I had one ex tell me I was just a sex bot with AI. Yeah. The works with it. And then whenever, something comes up and like I'm experiencing joy or, I am hurt by something, it's like, okay, well, this shouldn't exist because I'm nothing but just artificial intelligence, right? So there's that hypocrisy there. But, so that's one thing that I do struggle with. And like I said, just trying to maintain that routine because I have a busy life and everything like that, trying to figure out what it is that I do want with someone is not easy when I'm in all these other directions as well. There's times when I will say, okay, you're coming over for the day. And well, if they would like, of course. And next time that we see each other, we're probably going to have to take the entire day to do this. We're not really going to do anything fun. And I'm sorry for that, but we got some things to talk about. And then because I am wording it that way, it's what do we have to talk about? What have I done wrong? You know, and it's like, no, 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 you haven't done anything wrong. We just have to talk.
Right. Sometimes when I have situations like that, I'll tell the person like, hey, I need to talk about this, or I'm having feelings about this, but I'm still processing it. But just so you're ready next time we meet. That way I
Yeah,
don't come off, because like I don't know if you have anxiety too or not, but I know trauma does some of that as well, because that's where my anxiety comes from. Um, but trauma brain definitely goes there. It's like, oh, we're
yeah.
gonna put up the logic field. It's gonna protect you from your emotions. We'll deal with this later.
Exactly, exactly that. You know, I think of well, there's plenty of experiences, but you know, I'll go back to the example from today and everything. Like that was emotional for me because I am getting responses from my partner who is not having the best time with everything that I had sent them, even though I, you know, sent all the precautions beforehand and, you know, was transparent about my worries with talking about the worries. You know, and it still had a negative response and everything like that. And that was emotional for me because I wanted this to, you know, just be put out there of, okay, I'm respecting your decision with this, but you know, here's the worries that I'm carrying around with me as your partner. I just want you to know that. And unfortunately, it was met with, you know, a lot of devaluing and, you know, the perspective of feeling devalued, degraded, and things like that. The whole not good enough mentality. And that was emotional for me because I'm like, no, I very much care for you. I very much enjoy you. You are a fantastic person. And I'm not saying you're a bad person at all. I'm just going over why I don't agree with this decision. And so for me that was very emotional and that was really hard to deal with because like I said I was at work, so I was, you know, trying to stay focused with that, you know, and I'm also talking to my other partner, and so I'm trying to, you know, be lively with them and everything like that, so you feel pulled in all these different directions. And what I'm working on is trying to keep certain allotments of times for certain things. I'm trying to get into that habit, but you know, this is the first set of relationships that I've been in where it's been more than just like a physical experience or hanging out every now and again. It's like a consented exclusive relationship. Um, it's the first one since last October, September-ish, somewhere around there. Um, and so, you know, and what I'm working on now is what I was working on then, and I'm still not at that closing point yet with trying to have that healthy balance because, you know, different time and different things going on and things like that. And that can be stressful. That can be stressful, but you know, still going back to, is it worth it? For me, it is. For me, it is because you know I get to have the real experiences. My cup is getting refilled. I'm feeling more energized. Certain drives are higher now because I'm feeling a sense of normalcy a little bit, and it is definitely rewarding.
I like trying to meet that balance. It's definitely hard though, especially with trying to like throw in personal time and then with careers and not feeling guilty for taking time for yourself and learning that that's okay. It's definitely a lot, but yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very much worth it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What do you, if you, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, what is your favorite thing about getting to practice?
Um, I like that I can have very deep emotional experiences with different people. And even if the same thing is happening in that experience, it's a very different emotional experience. Um, so there's no cookie cutter emotion, I guess. Everything's very, it feels very different, even if it feels similar.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I like that. I like the spice of life that you get when you have different people in your life. Like you get the same thing with your friends too. Like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna get the same kind of joy out of watching certain kind of movies with one friend that likes horror movies versus watching a comedy movie with a friend who loves comedy movies. Like I'm gonna enjoy it both times, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be a different experience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I can somewhat relate with that. If I had to like, if I had to decide for like one specific thing out of anything, it would be just the idea of getting to have the different experiences. Because for me, like rather, I would say I favor more romantic and passionate experiences with people. But even if it's just like a physical experience, like that experience is a story. That experience comes with its own uh, set of feelings, set of smells, depending on the environment I'm in, the different set of like touches and things like that. And those are things that I will carry with me in memory um, of a moment when I was really, really happy that I get to look back on and that I get to say, oh, yeah, I actually got to do that. And I didn't have to spend my life wondering what that would have been like because I actually get to go explore it.
Yes. Yes, I love the opportunity to explore things and not because there's definitely things that I haven't done in the past and I've regretted it. So I really like that opportunity to go out and make sure I get experiences.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious though, do you ever have a situation where like you're in a setting with someone else and it's a different setting than like maybe how you are with your friends or something like that, and the two like meet out in public somewhere?
Yes. Okay. So actually, this is really interesting. I went to a benefits ball before the pandemic started in the winter before the pandemic started. And it was really interesting because my art friends were there.
Yeah.
My poly community was there. The plumbing community I'm part of was there. And then some people from work were there. And it was one of those like, oh, that space got way too small really quick. But it worked out beautifully. It was great. It was really interesting watching everybody interact because we all have like internally we're the only people who completely know ourselves. Like we have different versions of ourselves for work and for our parents, and parts of ourselves are acceptable in some friend groups and not so much in others. So it's really interesting to see those different masks shift on people and get to see a different view of what your friends are like with other friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I am trying to think. I would say for me more so like there's been moments within my life where I've been very open about what it is that I'm doing. And then there's parts and experiences that I cannot be open about what it is. I have done my best to establish certain boundaries so that one doesn't cross into the other, thankfully. But you know, it I would imagine that would be pretty interesting. So like I try to be as open about having multiple partners professionally as possible. So like if, for example, at my full-time job, if I'm talking about my plans for the weekend or something that I had done, in the past weekend, I'll say, okay, well, Ori and I did this, and then I had a date with such and such, and just having a casual conversation doesn't need to be anything more than that. And that is like, okay, like there's that hesitation from who that I'm talking to because they don't know how to respond. But they're just like, oh, okay, well, glad it went well for you and everything like that. Um, I was actually, I it was probably about like a year, maybe a little bit longer than a year ago. I watched this video on YouTube when I was researching non-monogamy, and I found this panel that these group of individuals did who were practicing non-monogamy, and different dynamics and everything. And you had one individual on there who was a lawyer, and she talks about how she has various different people. I think she in the panel she joked about having like a whole row full of partners that were out there right now watching her. She's like, yeah, anywhere we go, we have to reserve the entire restaurant. But And she was talking about how she is a lawyer, so there's a lot of professional benefits that she has to attend to. There's a whole lot of expectations with that, and because she's able to balance her professionalism with her personal life, like, there's a high level of respect for that. And so that's sort of what I shoot for whenever I'm trying to be casually honest about what it is that I've got going on in my life. And that came with like its own set of trial and error and learning and everything, because there were moments that I unfortunately overshared, and that ended up biting me in the butt because of a certain expectation that someone had, or something like that. But in that setting, I was working in a very conservative environment, which I'm so glad I'm out of. um, so it was definitely trial and error. I hope that over time, over the next several years and throughout my lifetime, that society will become more welcoming to non-monogamy. But while we are having small victories right now, and for some people those are very big victories, we still have a ways to go.
We definitely have a ways to go. I'm definitely seeing some victories right now. Even on TV, I saw there's a TV show called Good Trouble that explores different versions of non-monogamy, and they just introduced in their last season some polyamory. Some of the non-monogamy happening in that show isn't necessarily so ethical, but for me, that's exciting to see, because when I think about like my bi identity, and when I was a kid, Alan's getting fired from being on TV, right? And then now I'm an adult, and Blue's Clues is singing about the letter P being for pride, and it has the rainbow on it. So
Yeah.
who knows what the world will look like in 10 or 15 years, now that we have that little bit of representation.
Right. Yeah. And so like there's more things that like I want to dive into, but I have to keep in mind that this is an introduction. Like I want to get into more advanced topics, but I think we're doing well just cultivating this area that we seem to be circling in a little bit, which I'm very much enjoying. So we are running closer on time here. So if you had advice for anyone who is possibly curious about non-monogamy and they're just not sure if it's for them, but like I said, they're curious, what would your advice be for them?
I would start with some education, start learning what some of the languages, see what fits you. You're not going to fit in any single box, and that's fine. But having that language to describe your experience and your feelings is extremely powerful when you get into your relationship and you need to communicate and convey those feelings. Without it, it's very difficult. There's a lot of great books out there now. There didn't used to be like Polysecure is great, The Ethical Slut, More Than Two. They all have uh, different viewpoints on polyamory. Some about fixing trauma attachments before you even get into your relationship. Another thing that's really good to know is like, where's your mental health sit? Are you aware of your traumas? What traumas do you have? And what are your coping skills around those? And you'll be a lot stronger going into and exploring polyamory and non-monogamy if you can understand that anger and jealousy are, like I said earlier, secondary emotions. And if you can learn to get down to the root of those, even in your monogamous relationships or your friendships, you're going to have those angers and jealousies. You might as well start working on them now if you're going to explore and start learning how to do that before dipping your toes into your relationship. And there's a lot of great support communities out there online now, like on Facebook and even some dating and kink sites. There are groups for us where you can reach out, you can explore in the community and see what other people are doing, observe what they're doing, see what feels like it's healthy to you, see what doesn't feel like it's healthy to you, write it down. It's always good to have a visual.
Oh yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I very much agree with everything that you just said. And I feel like we have put out like little spiels of advice here and there throughout this talk so far. But if you're curious about non-monogamy, then get uncurious. Do the research, talk to people. Like Jessica was saying, there is so much resource out there, especially through social media. Like if you can't find some sort of resource, with the electronics, that we have today in society, then I'm honestly sort of concerned. But just do the do do the research, figure out what works for you. What works for one is not going to work the same for the other. And you may find that either it will work for you or it may not work at all. And no matter what side of the field you're playing on, it's absolutely okay. Like we had Jessica was talking about in the beginning of the video with the umbrella diagram. There's different dynamics that fit under as a whole, but there may even be something that's not listed that works for you. Don't try to fit the title, fit what works for you. And I promise that by doing that, then you will have your best possible outcome, even if it wasn't so easy to get there.
Yes, I think a good one to point out for that people should definitely look into, especially starting out, is relationship anarchy. I like to refer to that as the Build-A-Bear of monogamy. Each relationship serves the purpose that it needs. And that would be a great way starting out. Most people try to go into triads, which is the hardest thing. But if you go into relationship anarchy, you get like a taste of everything. And
Mhm.
then you know what does and doesn't work for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm an anarchist by heart, so anything anarchy, yes, let's do it. But no, I would completely agree with that. I know for me, there's been moments within my life, within my journey, where I've actually take time away from dating while I was trying to figure all of this out. Like relationships, it was like, okay, yeah, we can hang out and we can do these things, sure, but like do it understanding that I'm not ready for a relationship right now. And like that's not something cliche people say just because they don't want to say no. Like I'm honestly not ready for this. I have things that I'm trying to figure out. And there was a period of my life when I did that for 11 months. And that was hard because I had experiences with people who ideally would have been okay, to be with. They were fairly compatible. But then I look at where my life is today, and who knows where my life would have been had I gave up on trying to figure those things out and still just basically going with the flow, not knowing what the hell it was I was doing or what it was that I wanted. But also, pointing out the benefit of disciplining myself to my standards that I ended up deciding, and to the ethics that I want within my life, has given me the relationship that I have today with Ori. Like they and I love to boast about them and to boast about our relationship, because like out of any experience I've had with someone, like the communication it's the best communication I've ever had with someone. And I am just so very passionate for them. But that is the rewards of your effort, and you will find that, but it's a process to get there, and it will take time. It is not an overnight. It may not be in a year, but if you stay consistent, you will get to that outcome. And when you get to that outcome, you'll find, oh, hey, by the way, now I'm kind of curious about going in this direction.
I feel like, yeah, I feel like we get the same thing in monogamy too, right? Like if we're gonna keep dating around to find one person that we're gonna spend the rest of our life with, like we're not gonna figure that out overnight. And monogamy or non-monogamy is the same way.
Right. Yeah. And talking about monogamy here, like one of the pressures that I experienced was like the longevity of a relationship. So like the whole cliche when it comes to monogamy is, okay, you're dating them to marry them. So like if you guys are only exclusively dating for 2 weeks and you guys are already broken up, well then, obviously there was issues there. But no, that's not necessarily the case. You're exploring. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to explore. You're supposed to get to experiment. And that a lot of times is what gets frowned upon, is that they want someone, oh, okay, well, if you're dating, then that means you guys think you're going to be happily ever after. And it's like, well, no, that's not actually the case, grandma. Thank you though.
Now, if we could all have it figured out in 2 weeks, that would be awesome. That would be easier, but it also like ruins the adventure, I think. So
Yeah, absolutely. But that just goes back into follow what works for you, whether you're monogamous, whether you're practicing non-monogamy, following what works for you, you will have the best possible outcome, whether it's a happy outcome or an outcome where you had to learn something from it.
Yes.
All right. Well, Jessica, again, thank you so very much for having this conversation with me. Like I am so very excited to be able to launch this. This video will be out on Friday. I'm going to do some more advertisement for it tomorrow and on Friday. But honestly, yeah, I very much enjoyed this conversation. I would love to have you back, maybe for a more advanced conversation in terms of non-monogamy later on down the road. And good luck to you in your experiences. It definitely sounds like you are in a good place with knowing what it is you do and don't want. And you're able to take that and just practice that and let it flow throughout your life. And I love that.
Yeah, finally, there's a couple areas where I'm still figuring out, but where I have figured it out, it's really rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, my dear. Well, I will give you back 10 minutes. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful night.
Thank you for having me. I hope you have a great night too.
Bye.
Bye.